Welcome to my channel, the best place for ambitious millennial professionals to build their careers. Today, I'm going to do a personality analysis of Tanjiro Kamado, Demon Slayer's protagonist. I'm going to explain to you why there is an important lesson to be learned about Tanjiro's personality in our own careers. First of all, understand though this channel is focused on helping people build their dream careers, and understanding personality and soft skills is a major part of this. It's helpful to analyze fictional characters in particular because they embody personas. They're kind of like a simplified version of a human being. And therefore, when we look at that, it's much more easier to digest. And through these insights, we get to build interesting insights upon our own lives and what we do at work. Now, I understand personality isn't everything, and there are many other variables to a person's behavior, such as the social forces, values, physical, emotional, and mental states that they're in, and so on. And so with that caveat being said, while personality is not a crystal ball, the Big Five personality traits helps us to understand how an individual typically would behave in terms of repetitious patterns. So the Big Five personality traits can be introduced using the acronym OCEAN. O stands for the openness of experience, which means whether one prefers to try new things or stick with the tried and true. C stands for conscientiousness, which means whether one is able to sit down and really focus on a single task versus one is a multitasker. E stands for extraversion, which means whether one is an extrovert or an introvert. A stands for agreeableness, which means whether one is willing to put their own agenda first versus willing to put the group's agenda first. And N stands for trait neuroticism, which means the extent one is able to tolerate stress. So the more neurotic you are, the less stress tolerant you are. And so each trait and its subtraits lie in a continuum from low to high, and it's usually ranked based on percentile. But for this purpose, we're just going to go with very low, low, medium, medium high, high, and very high. Now, if you want to take a quick and free personality test, you can take one in the descriptions below. Feel free to unsub from my mailing list if you don't want to hear from me anymore, because it truly is meant to be free. But this personality test, what it does for you is it breaks down what your personality is like using the Big Five personality traits and identifies what are some good work characteristics for you and what are some things that you should avoid in the workplace, right? So it's a career personality test. So without further ado, let's get started on analyzing Tanjiro, but just a quick heads up that there's going to be some spoilers, obviously, since I'm analyzing the character and I'm going to be going into some of the details of what happened during the plot of the story. Now, on that note though, I also want to specify that I've only watched the anime and read a bit of the manga up to the point of the anime. So if you're thinking like, hey, this is going to happen in the future and this guy is not talking about it, it's because I actually want to reserve the show for myself so that I can enjoy and I don't want to know any spoilers. So please don't be a douche and drop spoilers in the comments below. Alright, so let's get started. And I actually would invite you to, if you understand the Big Five personality traits already, to just stop the video right now and score Tanjiro yourself. What do you think his score is going to be like? Alright, so let's get started. Now, for trait openness, I gave Tanjiro a high. And the reason is because he's creative, he thinks in terms of strategy rather than tactics. And we can find this very early on. So for example, in episode 1, he throws the axe at Giyu as he rushes over, right? And that is highly strategic thinking. Another example of strategic thinking is when Inosuke noted in their battle against the father spider, against Rui, that Tanjiro actually controls the whole flow of the battle, and that is more of a strategist rather than a tactician. Tanjiro is also a problem solver, as he time and again proves that he uses his brains and not only his bronze to defeat the enemy. And episode 19, the Hinokami episode, which is so epic, that's where he snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. And so for trait openness, I would definitely give him high. Now, for trait conscientiousness, I would also give him high. Partially it's because perhaps it's the older brother thing, where he is more or less conditioned culturally and also just by his social environment that he is the older brother and he needs to be responsible. But it's not only being an older brother that makes you conscientious, because there's a lot of people in the world who are older brothers who are simply not conscientious. Another sign of him being conscientious is the determination and his work ethic, right? The show makes it very clear that he's got calluses on his hands from working the sword, and also from episode 3, his determination to split the rock, and how he essentially unknowingly became the best of all the students of that style. And so therefore, conscientiousness, I think there's no one who would doubt the work ethic of Tanjiro being a hard worker, being focused, and being able to hone in and accomplish his goals. The next personality trait is extraversion, and for that I would put him in the mid-high range. And the reason for that is because yes, he does have a positive outlook all the time, and extroverts tend to be optimists as well. And because of this positive outlook, he's able to put in the hard work and the focus to accomplish his goals. Furthermore, he's able to take charge, and he also trusts Inosuke to execute in the battle against the father spider, right? And so being able to take charge and being able to trust other people is generally an extroverted trait. However, I kept him in the mid-high range and not the high range because the fact of the matter is he does exhibit some introverted behaviors. So for example, in episode 3, while he was training, he keeps a diary, he reflects. And also, you can see that while he is often very optimistic, there are times that he does get down and he does get kind of sad. And it's totally understandable since he lives in a very dark world where demons are like chewing people up, right? However, the fact of the matter is, yeah, he does have his brooding side and his slightly sad side as well. For the next personality trait agreeableness, I would put him as high. And the reason for that is because throughout the show, it shows that he has a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion for other people. He has a lot of patience for Inosuke and Zenitsu, and he's even willing to put down his pride and beg to save his sister Nezuko. And this compassion isn't reserved only for humans, as he time and again shows a lot of compassion for the demons as well, such as when he switched mid-stance against the mother spider demon, and also in episode 2 where he refused to kill the first demon he encountered while traveling with his sister. He touched the hands of the demon who killed all his fellow students in episode 6, I believe. And for the writer demon as well, he shows appreciation for not stepping on his work and so on. And so despite Demon Slayer being situated in a dark world, the fact that Tanjiro's high agreeableness, empathy, and compassion being a heavily featured personality trait shows that it's played up on purpose so that there's a tension, right? And there's a tension between the redemption and the revenge story of a nice person. So my question would be that what happens if Nezuko dies, or if Tanjiro gets pushed to the level of despair where agreeableness no longer serves him well? Is he willing to sacrifice that? Is he willing to become something that he's not naturally? And I think that's what makes this whole story fascinating in the first place, is the whole agreeableness. Are you able to retain who you are in a very dark world when you can see other demon slayers such as the Hashiras? Some of them have essentially turned their back against their own humanity. Like some of them are even monstrous than their own monsters. And this is a common trait in a lot of the anime that we see nowadays. Like if you look at Bleach, that scientist guy, I forgot his name, but that scientist guy is essentially like as creepy as the monsters, right? And so the whole tension between how far can you fight the monsters until you become a monster is essentially something that is positioned as a core theme in this story. Now more on that later. The next personality trait is trait neuroticism, and for Tanjiro I would give him a mid-low score. Because neuroticism, it has some correlation with high agreeableness. So people who are agreeable tend to be also a little bit more neurotic as well. However, there's also a strong negative association with conscientiousness. And Tanjiro is able to show time and again that he is in control of his emotions. And so therefore, even though he's in a super stressful environment constantly, he does handle it relatively well. So for that, I will give him a mid-low score for trait neuroticism. And so here's a quick summary of his score. My score for Tanjiro is high in openness, high in conscientiousness, mid-high in extraversion, high in agreeableness, and mid-low for trait neuroticism. Do you agree with my score? What score did you give Tanjiro? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, so having scored Tanjiro, now let's move on to the analysis, right? What can we learn from this personality profile and how does it relate to us? The first point I think is important is that the context in which the personality manifests itself is super important. Demon Slayer, like I said before, is situated in a super dark world, and it needs to be littered with comic relief by Zenitsu, Inosuke, and other contributions, right? Because without those comic relief, it's not going to be very suited for a shonen audience. It was clearly communicated to us within the first few minutes of the show that Tanjiro is the designated man of the family after his father's passing, which is a tradition found in many East Asian cultures. Now, Tanjiro played it safe and he stayed the night optionally at the very beginning, which led to him being absent when his family was slaughtered. The only chance of redemption for him is to find a cure for his sister Nezuko, which then drives him and motivates him to apply himself and train to survive as a demon slayer in the madness of this dark world. This essentially positions Tanjiro's heroic journey to be one of redemption rather than revenge, and it's literally and metaphorically hanging by a thread from becoming a very dark vengeance story. Nezuko is his only means to redemption and his main source of motivation. The symbolism of this is found in the epic episode 19, Hinokami, where Nezuko was literally tied up in the webs of fate and her brother was rushing towards Rui and willing to offer up his life to save her. And she is the only one to save him from his own destruction. Her blood is literally what powers his blade to cut off Rui's head, to snap the threads from killing him, symbolizing that she is what's driving Tanjiro to overcome all the odds. In other words, vengeance isn't really his story, and his personality backs that up. But at the end of the day, all of us can be prone to doing things that are not natural to us if we snap, right? We can all be put in a situation that's so stressful that makes us turn to something that we are not fundamentally wired to be like. And so my question is, will Tanjiro essentially lose it if Nezuko dies, which is highly unlikely given her plot armor, but I digress. Ironically, at the end of the day, it's a demon who's keeping Tanjiro alive and human. In addition, his agreeableness in terms of his compassion and empathy teases out the human-demon relationship to be much more nuanced, since there's no really pure good or evil. This gray area is a constant theme in the show, where Tanjiro will inevitably master both water and fire, which are traditionally opposite elements, which brings us to my next point. My second point is Tanjiro has the perfect traditional leadership profile with one major weakness, being high in agreeableness. Now let's look at what a traditional leadership profile looks like. A traditional leadership profile is someone who's high in openness, someone who's conscientious, someone who's extroverted, someone who is disagreeable, and someone who is not neurotic. But Tanjiro's leadership style is one of what we call a catalyst, meaning he's high in agreeableness. Everything else is the same. His personality is constructed to think strategically and stay focused on his goals while being an optimist and also keeping himself level-headed. His agreeableness has helped him to build consensus and buy-in from a pretty wide range of crazy people around him, like Zenitsu, Inosuke, Giyu, and the whole Demon Slayer organization, so that they can find a win-win situation for everyone. However, at the same time, his high agreeableness will be both his strength and weakness for the rest of the series. So far, he's been able to hold his own in terms of setting boundaries and pushing for his agenda, but this is definitely his Achilles heel, and we can all foresee that it may cost him dearly at some point in the near future. We're always a single step away from all hell breaking loose. A car accident, an illness, a pandemic, or a demon paying our home a visit is all that's needed to put our lives in disarray. In these sorts of hellish situations, being agreeable helps rally people around you. But at the same time, if you don't know how to set strong boundaries and remain focused on your goals and grounded on your values, you may be easily swayed. Tanjiro's personality profile and him being an older brother obviously played a role in his hero's journey. However, if he was any less conscientious, he may have failed his training. If he was more neurotic, he may have broken down like any other normal person. If he was any less open-minded, he would not have been able to solve the problems his enemies were posing at him. So therefore, perhaps the most important lesson that we can draw from Tanjiro in our own lives is that being agreeable doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. He's going to attain his goal of saving his sister at all costs. It doesn't matter what other people throw at him, his goal is still the same, and therefore he is able to prioritize his agenda. And this is probably one of the hardest things that people who are high in agreeableness struggle with, is keeping their own agenda. And one of the things I always ask my clients is, if you are prioritizing X, Y, Z, then what are you giving up on? And so perhaps the best lesson that we can draw from Tanjiro is being agreeable doesn't mean you have to give up your own goals. It doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself for the goals of other people. And that's it. That's my analysis of Tanjiro's personality. Mugen Train came out this past weekend, and I'm looking forward to see how his heroic journey continues to evolve. If you like this video, give this video a like and click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can receive regular updates on videos that will help you in your career. Remember, if you want to take the Big 5 personality traits test, you can just take one in the description below. It's totally free, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.